Okay, we'll complete our so for, as we said, for facilitated diffusion is also moving the drug from the area of high concentration to the low concentration. Does not require energy, but here entry to the cell through or here involving a carrier protein. This carrier protein undergo, as we said, some change which allowing the passage of a drug or endogenous molecule into the interior cell and moving them from the area of high concentration to the area of low concentration. Here in the other mechanism, which is active transport, involves, here we involve a specific carrier protein. Here we need a specific carrier protein inside the cell membrane. Here also it requires energy, and the movement of the drug is against the concentration gradient. That's mean from the low concentration to the high concentration of the drug. So energy-dependent active transport is driven by the hydrolysis of adenosine triphosphate, which is here it is capable of moving drug against. That's why capable of moving drug from the low concentration to the low concentration. And here we have an energy as the hydrolysis of adenosine triphosphate. Such rebel can be inhibited by contrasported substance. Other mechanisms such as endocytosis and exocytosis, and here this kind or this type of drug delivery system transport of exceptionally large size across to the cell membrane. Large here, large size of large drug molecule, for large drug molecule. Endocytosis involves engulfment of a drug molecule by the cell membrane and transport into the cell by benching of the drug-filled vesicle. While exocytosis is the reverse of endocytosis and is used by cells to secrete many substances by similar vesicle formation process. For example, for vitamin B12, it transported across the gut wall by endocytosis, whereas, for example, certain neurotransmitters such as epinephrine are stored in intracellular membrane-bound vesicle in the nerve terminal and are released by exocytosis. There are some factors influencing absorption. What these factors? Firstly, pH, effect of pH on drug absorption. Actually, most drugs are either weak acid or weak base. So the acidic drug release a proton, H+, causing a charged anion, A, to form HA here for acidic drugs, while the basic drugs can also release an protons, H. However, the protonated form of basic drug is usually charged, and loss of a proton produce the unchanged base. Okay. A drug passes through membrane easier when it is uncharged. Thus, for a weak acid, the uncharged proton HA can permeate through membrane. Okay. For here, the ratio between the two forms, is determined by the pH at the site of absorption, the strength of the weak acid or base, which is represented by the ionization constant pKa. For example, if pH smaller than pKa, protonated form predominate. If pH larger than pKa, protonated form predominates. For example, and here now we are talking about pKa. What is pKa? pKa is a measure of the strength of the interaction of a compound with a proton. The lower the pKa of a drug, the more acidic it is. Okay, the more acidic it is. Conversely, the higher pKa, the more basic is the drug. So when pH is less than pKa, the protonated forms HA and pH predominate, while when pH is greater than pKa, the protonated form A and B predominate in this case. Factor and also other factor other than pH influencing absorption, such as blood flow to the absorption site, because blood flow is much greater in the intestine than in the stomach. Absorption is greater in the intestine. Another factor, total surface area available for absorption. Example, intestine have large surface area, so large area of intestine. Contact time at the absorption surface. For example, absorption is affected by change in gastric motility. Example, in case of diarrhea. The 5th factor, which is expression of B-glycoprotein. B-glycoprotein is a multi-drug, a transmembrane transporter protein, which is responsible for transporting various molecules, okay, including a drug across cell membrane. It is expressed throughout the body, and its function has multi-function in liver, kidney, brain, and intestine. For beta-glycoprotein, as we said, it is expressed throughout the body, and its function include in the liver, transporting drug into bile for elimination, in kidney, pumping a drug into urine for excretion, in the placenta, transporting the drug back into maternal blood therapy, reducing fetal exposure to drug. In the intestine, transporting the drug into the intestinal lumen and reducing the drug absorption into the blood. In the brain, capillary, pumping a drug back into blood, limiting a drug access to the brain. So high expression of B-glycoprotein reduces absorption. This is for beta-glycoprotein. Now we are talking about the bioavailability, which is an important term in the pharmacokinetic of the drug. Bioavailability is the fraction of administered drug that reach the system circulation. As an example, if 100% milligram of a drug are administered orally, and 70 grams of this drug are absorbed unchanged, so the bioavailability is 0.7 or 70%. Determining bioavailability is important for calculating drug dosage. For non-intravenous route of administration, the route by which a drug is administered, as well as the chemical and physical properties of the agent, they will affect the bioavailability. For IV drug, absorption is complete. That means 100% of bioavailability. Bioavailability is determined by comparing plasma levels of a drug after a particular route of administration. For example, oral administration with levels achieved by IV administration. By plotting plasma concentration of a drug versus time. In the area under the curve can be measured. The area under the curve can be measured. This curve reflects the extent of absorption of a drug. For example, this is 100%, for example, 100 after percent of a drug rapidly enter the circulation after IV administration. While when the drug is given orally, only part of the administered dose appear in the plasma. By plotting plasma concentration of drug versus time, the area under the curve can be measured. And here the area under the curve for after IV injection, and here the area under the curve after oral administrations. And here how we can determine the bioavailability by equal to area under concentration orally divided by area under concentration of IV injection by 100. It will give us the number of how can we measure the bioavailability of the drugs, which can be measured. Factors influence oral bioavailability such as first pass, hepatic metabolism, nature of the drug formulation, solubility of the drug, chemical instability, decomposition in acidic gas juice, decomposition by hydrolytic gut enzyme, degradation by gut microorganism, and food in the gut also may alter absorption rate and amount. And also gut wall enzyme also will affect the bioavailability. So there are multi-factors could influence oral bioavailability. Oral bioavailability, as we say for IV, it will completely 100% bioavailability. It will not affect. For first pass metabolism, when an oral drug is absorbed across the GI tract, it first enters the portal circulation before the systemic circulations. But if the drug is rapidly metabolized, and here the drug is rapidly metabolized, less of the active ingredient will reach the systemic circulation in case of oral, here in case of oral. For example, nitroglycerin, 90% cleared through passage through the liver. 90% cleared through passage through the liver. It is given sublingually. So, drugs administered orally are first exposed to the liver and may be extensively metabolized before reaching the rest of the body, while a drug administered IV enter directly to the system circulation and have direct access to the rest of the body. Other factors, solubility of the drug. Very hydrophilic drug cannot cross lipid-rich cell membrane, and so they are poorly absorbed. Extremely hydrophobic drugs are poorly absorbed because they are insoluble in aqueous body fluid. For good absorption, the drug needs to be hydrophobic with some water solubility. So most drugs are weak acid or bases. Most drugs are weak acid or bases. So for chemical instability, as an example, some drugs such as penicillin G are unstable in the pH of gastric content. Others, such as insulin, are destroyed in the GI tract by degraded enzyme. Nature of the drug absorption. Drug absorption may be altered by factors unrelated to the chemistry of the drug. For example, particle size, salt form, crystal, polymer, enteric content, and the presence of exceptions such as binder and dispersing agent can influence the ease of dissolution and therefore alter the rate of absorption. Bioequivalence, another term. Here, two related drug preparations are bioequivalent if they show comparable bioavailability and similar times to achieve peak blood concentrations. Therapeutic equivalence. Here, two similar drug products are therapeutically equal if they are pharmaceutically equivalent with similar clinical and safety profile. Now we will talking about drug distribution, also one of the important process of pharmacokinetic. Now we finished talking about the absorption, and now we are talking about drug distribution. Drug distribution, which is the process by which drug distribution is the process by which a drug reversibly leaves the bloodstream and enter the interstitium and then cells of the tissue. For a drug administered IV, when absorption is not a factor, the initial phase, that is from immediately after administered through a rapid fall in concentration, represents the distribution phase during which a drug rapidly disappears from the circulation and enters the tissue. And here, this figure explains drug concentration in serum after a single injection of a drug, which assumes that the drug distributes and it's subsequently eliminated. Okay. Drug distribution depends on many factors: cardiac output and regional blood flow. So the blood flow in the cardiac, capillary permeability, tissue volume, and in addition to drug protein binding in plasma and drug protein binding in tissue, also hydrophobicity of the drug. This is some factor that drug distribution depends on them. For blood flow, due to unequal distribution of cardiac output, the rate of blood flow to tissue capillaries is variable. For example, blood flow to the brain, liver, and kidney is greater than that to the blood flow to the skeletal muscle. Adipose tissue, skin, and viscera have lower rates of blood flow. Example, thiopental, highly lipid soluble, initially rapidly moves into the brain due to high blood flow and produce anesthesia. A slower distribution into skeletal muscle and adipose tissue lowers plasma concentrations and CNS concentration. Here, consciousness is regained. The other factors, which capillary permeability, it depends on capillary structure and chemical nature of the drug. Here, for the drug and this is drug, and here the slit junction membrane. Okay, large fenestration allow drug to move between the blood and interstitium in the liver. And here the structure of endothelial cells in the liver and structure of a brain capillary, and here the permeability of a brain capillary. For drug protein binding, reversible binding to plasma protein a drug in a non-diffusible form and slows their transfers out of the vesicular compartment. Binding is relatively non-selective regarding chemical structure, and it takes place at site on the protein to which endogenous compounds such as bilirubin normally attach. Plasma albumin is the major drug-binding protein and may act as a drug reservoir. That is, the concentration of the free drug decreases due to elimination by metabolism or excretion. The bound drug dissociate form dissociate from protein, and we will have free drug. This maintains the free drug concentration as a constant fraction of the total drug in the plasma, and this free drug will then undergo distribution, metabolism, and finally excretion. For binding to tissue protein, a drug can accumulate in tissue due to tissue protein binding, extending their effect or causing local toxicity. Okay, this tissue reservoir may serve as a major source of the drug and prolong its action, and on the other hand can cause local drug toxicity. For example, for acrolein, the metabolite of cyclophosphamide is toxic to the kidney because of its accumulation in renal cells. Hydrophobicity. Hydrophobic drugs can cross cell membrane, while hydrophilic drugs need to pass through the slit junction. Here, how can we calculate volume of distribution? The apparent volume of distribution, VD, can be thought of, which is the fluid volume that is required to contain the entire drug in the body at the same concentration measured in the plasma. It is calculated by dividing the dose that ultimately gets into the systemic circulation by the plasma concentration at time 0. Although volume of distribution has no physiologic or physical basis, it can be useful to compare the distribution of a drug with the volume of the water compartment in the body. Example, in the plasma, volume of distribution per liter, large molecular weight or highly protein-bound drug, such as Capillary, for example, it needs extracellular fluid about 14 liters. Low molecular weight but hydrophilic cannot cross cell membrane. For total body fluid is about 42 liters. in an individual of 70 kilogram in weight. All of this in an individual about 70 kilogram. About 70 kilogram. Total body water, which is here the body fluid of plasma, interstitial volume, intracellular volume, which is equal 42 liters, divided to extracellular volume about 14 liters and intracellular volume 28 liters, which is equal to 42 liters. For extracellular volume, we have 14 liters subdivided to plasma volume about 4 liters and interstitial volume 10 liters. All of this in an individual of 70 kilogram. 70 kilogram. Apparent volume of distribution. A drug rarely associates with one water compartment. Usually drugs are bound to cellular compartment, like protein in plasma and cell, lipid in adipocyte and cell membrane, nucleic acid in nuclei of cell. Volume distribution is useful for calculating the loading dose of a drug. For example, if 10 mg of a drug are injected and the plasma concentration is 1 milligram per liter, how can we calculate volume of distribution? Volume of this VD or apparent VD, it is divided by dividing the dose by concentration at time 0. Here the dose we have 10 milligram of a drug and the plasma concentration is 1, so it's equal to 10 liters. Is equal to 10 liters. Plasma half-lives of drugs. Plasma half-life of the drug. Here, length of time needed to decrease drug plasma concentration by 1/2. The greater the half-life of the drug, the longer it takes to excrete. The greater half-life of the drug, the longer it takes to excrete. Plasma half-life is determined frequency and dosage of the drugs. For an example, extrapolation to time 0 gives C0. The hypothetical drug concentration predicts if the distribution had been achieved instantly. Here in this plot indicate the half-life, which is the time it takes to reduce the plasma drug concentration by half. Here, in case of rapid injections of the drug, which reach the circulation directly, here reach the circulation directly at the time 0, C0. If the volume of distribution for a drug is large, most of the drug is in the extraplasmic space and is unavailable to excretory organs. Therefore, any factor that increases volume distribution can lead to an increase the half-life and extend the duration of action of the drug. Elimination depends on the amount of a drug delivered to the liver or the kidney per time unit. The greater the BD, as we said, the greater the volume distribution, the less drug that is available to the excretory organ, and the greater the volume distribution, the higher the half-life of the drug and the longer the duration of action. And exceptionally, high volume distribution indicates the sequestration of the drug in the tissue. Thank you for listening, and see you later or meet you later in the next lecture. Thank you.